This is CS 124, Lesson 1.4, Function Syntax. By now, you should already know how to use data types and how to declare a variable. Today, you're going to learn how to create a function in C++, how to pass data into a function, and how to identify the scope of a variable. A function is a group of statements that is executed when it is called from some point in the program. Main is a function. To understand functions, think of shopping. You go to the dairy to get cheese, the butcher's to get meat, and the baker to get bread. In the end, you have all the ingredients for a sandwich. But you needed help, because you don't know how to butcher meat or grow cheese. So you needed someone else to do that part for you, so that in the end, you could make a sandwich. In this example, each person had only one job, like cutting cheese or baking bread. Similarly, each function should only really do one task. This is called modularization. To use a function, you need to know how to declare it and how to run it. When declaring a function, there are several things to remember. First, we have the return type. This indicates what data type the output of the program will be. The function name is what we use to reference the function elsewhere in the program. The parameter list tells us what data is coming into the function. The return value is the output of the function, and what data it's going to give back to the calling function. Everything else within the curly braces makes up the statement list, which are the operations the function will complete. There's also the comment block. Although it isn't mandatory, it's good syntax and good style to have a comment block to explain what your function does and why. Also note that all executable lines of code go inside curly braces. Now that you know how to declare a function, we're going to talk briefly about how to call a function. If we have a function header that looks like this, you notice we have the type, the name of the function, the type of the parameter, and the name of the parameter. When we create a calling function, we leave off the types. So we have the same function name, but we don't have the type. We also have the parameter that we want to pass in to be used as feet. We'll talk more about parameter passing later. To better understand function calls, here we have set up two shells for functions as well as a shell for a main. We're going to start with a function that doesn't return anything. Because it will have no return value, it will be of type void, and we'll call it return nothing. And in here, we're simply going to display a meaningful question, just like this. As we've already said, we don't have any return type, so we'll just simply have our return statement with no value after it. Now let's discuss our function call. All you need, as we've mentioned, is the name of the function without the data type. So we'll leave off the void and type in return nothing, with parentheses to tell that it is a function. Now let's talk about our function that will actually return a value. This is going to return an integer, so we'll make it of type int. And we'll call it return a value. And, like return nothing, it will take no parameters. In here, we're going to return an integer value. So all we need is our return statement, followed by the integer value we want to return. Now let's add our function call there. The function call will look like the one above. Just the name of the function without any data types. We want to put this within a display statement, like this. Notice our function call is still right there. So we'll output this text, output whatever our function returns, and then output a new line. Now let's see how that displays. First, we called return nothing, and it displayed this text to the screen, which is what we got. Next, we output the text, the answer is, which we got right here. Then we called return a value, which gave us 42. We output that value, it came right here, and then we got our new line, just as expected. In our examples, we put main below our functions. This is because C++ programs are compiled linearly, from top to bottom. When a given line of code is compiled, all variables and functions it references should already be known by the compiler. That means variables and functions must be defined before the line of code in which they are referenced. If you don't want main at the bottom of a file, you must use prototypes. A prototype looks identical to the function header, but without any code. Prototypes tell the compiler that even though the function hasn't been defined yet, it will be defined later in the code. Note that a prototype is followed by a semicolon. Take note that this line is the function call. Now let's just say we have two functions, main and addNumber. AddNum adds 3 to whatever value is passed in, then returns the value. We declare a variable called mynum that holds 62. The next line passes mynum into the addNum function. A copy is made of mynum and sent to addNum. Any changes made to this copy will be local, meaning that they have effect only inside the function addNum and will not affect the value mynum inside of main. The function substitutes the value 62 for the variable name. The new value is calculated and then returned to main where it was called. New num is equal to 65. This is called pass by value. In pass by reference, an ampersand is put before the value that will be called by reference, like this. In pass by reference, the address of the variable is passed so that the new function actually uses the same variable as the calling function. When we pass by reference, the only changes we make to any changes we make to addNum will affect the variable globally, everywhere in the program. There are 4 types of parameter use. The first is input only. Here, data goes into the function, but nothing comes out. A display function is a good example of this. The second type is output only. In an output function, no data is taken in, but something is outputted or returned. For example, a prompt function where the program asks for input, then returns the input. The third type of processing occurs when data is converted from one type to another. For example, converting feet to meters, or adding 2 values together. The fourth and final type of passing is called an update, and that only happens when we're using pass by reference. In this case, the data goes in and is updated globally. The input and output parameters are the same. Let's return to our example and try to make it pass by value. If we're going to make it pass by value, we need to tell it, our function, that it's going to receive a value of type int. We'll call it value. And what we're going to do is return value plus 3. If we're going to have a function that takes parameters, we need a parameter to send it. So let's create one. We'll call it num. And it also has to be of type int, because we say here we're expecting an int. And we're going to set it equal to 39, because 39 plus 3 is 42. So now we need to tell our function call to expect our value. So now we're passing number in, so it'll take the number 39 and pass it up here. It will become value, and then the function will return value plus 3. And as you can see, we still get a 42. Now let's try to make this pass by reference. The key to pass by reference is putting an ampersand before the value that we're going to pass by reference. For the sake of our function, we're going to make this a void and no longer have a return value. That way we can prove that we're actually changing the address and not a copy of it. So we're going to reassign value to 42. We're also going to move our function call, because now our function doesn't return anything, and so it wouldn't display anything. So now we have our function call here. And we'll still display the answer here. But instead of displaying what the function returns, we'll just display number, because at its root, number has been changed from 39 to 42 by the function return a value. As you can see, it still worked just fine. So now that we've finished, hopefully you understand how to create a function, how to use a function, and how to pass parameters into a function.